The Hiding Place is the true story of the Ten Boom family during the Nazi occupation of Holland during World War II. The story centers around three main characters, the father Casper and his two daughters Corrie and Betsy. During the war, the Ten Boom family hid their Jewish neighbors at their watchmaking business and aided in their escape out of Holland. The family was eventually arrested, and Casper, Corrie, and Betsy were all sent to concentration camps, where only Corrie survived. Writing the score to focus on the family's adaptation of The Hiding Place was the most challenging and emotionally draining project I've faced to date. It would be the first time a score of mine would accompany a true story, and I felt a tremendous responsibility to bring a certain dignity to the production and the music I would compose. Before I composed a note of music, I had many conversations about the score with Dave Arnold, the producer of the project. We both agreed we wanted a non-American score. We wanted to draw upon Dutch and Polish composers like Gorecki, Lutoslawski, and Penderecki, who wrote music after World War II. I wanted to absorb the approach they took in composing, as it was a direct reaction to the events of the Holocaust. We also agreed not to have the big, sweeping 16-bar theme that so many scores have. It felt disingenuous for this particular project. I instead composed an 8-bar melody to represent the story, but more importantly developed 3 smaller melodic cells that represented the 3 main characters. I'll discuss that in more depth later. As a side note, I threw out more music on this score than any of my previous scores. There's an overall dark and melancholy sonic palette for this score. It's a somber but still hopeful story, so the moments of light and relief become very important to provide the listener with a chance to breathe. The main theme for The Hiding Place is written in 3/4 to make reference to the 3 main characters of the story. The theme is written in D minor and has a slight Eastern European feel to it, but it also has a hint of the musical stylings from the Jewish faith, especially when I use the A dominant 7th chord resolving to the D minor. After listening to Gorecki's music, I concentrated on linear writing rather than vertical chordal writing. As a result, the writing process was very slow. This was my first score that didn't center around grounded harmonic chord changes. Outside of the 8-bar Hiding Place theme, I concentrated on smaller melodic and rhythmic themes. I wrote 3 themes that were each 2-bar phrases, and these themes loosely represented Casper, Betsy, and Corrie. The themes weren't assigned to a particular character, I used them interchangeably. The 3 themes just represented the 3 characters and the relationship they had between each other. I called it Trinitarian thematic composition. In the most climatic scene, Corrie must walk a long hallway of the infirmary to see Betsy's lifeless body. Corrie has now lost everything, her father, her sister, her home. The 3 character themes are layered one on top of the other and filled in with supporting lines from below. It represents all the lives lost in this story, the main characters as well as the supporting characters. That was the primary goal I had in mind when I composed those 3 2-bar character themes. They had to eventually come together to create a deafening wall of sound in defiance to the hatred the Germans showed them. I knew I also wanted to take text from Psalm 119, have it translated into Dutch, and then write a soliloquy for Corrie. I would use it when she was in the most difficult of times. The psalm says, "Your word is a lamp unto my feet. You are my refuge and my shield. I hope in your word." And this passage was essential for Corrie's survival during this time. There's a scene when the Nazis storm the Ten Boom house and an officer violently throws Corrie to the ground. He's screaming at her to tell him where the Jews are. I chose to play the scene from the perspective of what was going on inside Corrie's mind rather than what the external circumstances appeared to be. I didn't want to play the Nazis with an identifiable bad guy theme. I thought that would cheapen the drama. I wrote some different sound masses to create a sonic palette. In certain scenes, the low strings are playing stagnant clusters over a melody that has no relationship to them at all. Each concentration camp has its own theme, but they aren't the most singable of melodies. These themes were usually stated without much orchestration. For one of the concentration camps, it began with a solo violin playing the entire passage on the low G string, trading off into the string orchestra. For Ravensbrück, it's the violins playing a lone unison melody trading off to the French horns and cello. There's one scene where a female Nazi guard, nicknamed the Snake, beats a female prisoner to death. That was the only scene in the entire score where I decided to play the violins from the audience's perspective. Using the octatonic scale, I wrote a 3-note rhythmic cell that I grew in range to create a violent backdrop that ends with the prisoner falling to the ground dead. For this score, I decided to feature 3 different soloists, a mezzo-soprano, a violin, and piano. While I've used vocalists and choirs many times in scores of mine, I wanted a woman's voice that reflected Corrie's character. The voice needed to be a mature voice and also very rich in the lower registers. The vocalist timbre would reflect Corrie's age, as she was in her 50s upon entering these concentration camps. Cliff Colnott, an incredible composer and conductor in Chicago, suggested an established mezzo-soprano in Chicago that could also sing in Dutch. Her voice was exactly what I had been hearing in my head, and her ability to translate Psalm 119 into the Dutch language was so far beyond my expectations. Violinist David Davidson played the solo violin parts on the score. During a break in the recording sessions, David told me that he actually played under Christoph Penderecki, and that's why so many of his solos sound so stylistically correct. He understood where those composers were coming from. A fantastic example of this is David's suggestion to play the violin solo for one of the cues in the concentration camps on the low G string entirely, and not cross onto the D string as I was expecting him to do. The result is a richer and more authentic violin solo for the time period. My roommate from music school, Don Bryn, played the solo piano parts on the score. There were some specific scenes between Corrie and one of the Nazi commanders where he tells Corrie the misery that he himself lives in, and the piano felt like the right choice. It felt intimate and left so much space for the commander's powerful confession. I'm still so grateful to producer Dave Arnold for choosing me to write this score. It was a true privilege to have the opportunity to write music for this powerful story. As I look back, I feel proud of the music I wrote, knowing that I exhausted every fiber of my creative being to bring dignity to the Ten Boom family and respect for their story. I hope that the music transports you to that dark time in the world's history and helps you remember the bravery of the Ten Boom family.